Joining us right now via Zoom chat is Dr. Michael Robillard. He is an independent scholar, philosopher, an Iraq War veteran. He has held prior academic appointments at the University of Notre Dame, the University of Oxford, and the US Naval Academy. His past writings have focused on issues concerning civil-military relations, veterans issues, the ethics of automated technology, free speech in academia. He is also a devout Roman Catholic, praise be to God, an American and a patriot. He's also the co-author of a book called Don't Go to College, A Case for Revolution with Timothy Gordon, and he joins us now. Good morning to you, Mr. Robillard.
Morning. Thanks for having me on.
You only have one downside in your life, and that is the fact that you joined the Army knowing full well that the Marine Corps did exist. So I shall pray for your soul.
Yeah. I must have not got the memo, I suppose. But yeah.
You and my father and my father's father, my uncle, cousins, all of you. I don't understand. The Marine Corps is the better option, but nonetheless, you decided to go to West Point. So I don't know. At any rate, you had the rest of your life to do penance. Let's talk about college instead. You have a PhD. You've taught in academia. I mean, highest levels, some would argue. And you're co-authoring a book that says, don't go to college?
Yeah. It's one of these cases, I suppose, where both myself and Timothy Gordon, we know whereof we speak. You know, we're not outsiders throwing rocks at a institution that we don't understand. Rather, we're insiders that watch the institution that we love essentially become corrupted to the point where we had to exit and then warn people of the corruption that's inside.
I think a lot of parents feel very pressured, and I'm speaking of just parents that I know. Their kid gets to become 18, and they've got to send them off to college, because we all know if you don't go to college, you will not amount to anything in life. So they feel this pressure. They especially want their kids to go to their alma mater or a great university, and they send them off. And too often, the results can be very tragic, couldn't they?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, there's this persistent narrative within mainstream American culture that a flourishing life is wholly dependent upon getting the credentialing degrees that a college or university gives you. And that generates a particular amount of anxiety, both in parents and young Americans, to get those credentialing degrees. But in the process, people, they're not paying attention to the content of knowledge and lack of critical thinking that is now being encouraged at the universities, and has been for some time. And in the last 5 years in particular, with the rise of so-called wokeism, the curriculum that's at colleges now, it's absolutely hobbling to one's flourishing as well as critical thinking capacities.
What do you see as the greatest threat in higher education today?
I would say the transgender movement in particular, right? So you have wokeism or intersectionality, which is the larger idea of that everyone's an aggrieved victim, everyone is oppressed along some sort of intersectional hierarchy of victim hierarchy. And then the tip of the spear is transgenderism, where these folks conflate the notions of biological sex, socially constructed gender, and personally determined gender identity. And then they run all these concepts together under the same heading of gender. And it's like a linguistic shell game or three-card Monty, where you can't even get them to pin down an explicit definition, as Catholic political commentator Matt Walsh has pointed out. These folks, they can't even determine or define the term woman. And if that is the foundation upon which students are organizing their world, then that society is doomed to incoherence and failure.
We pay top dollar. We work hard to get in or get our kids into some of these universities, and then we still have to, even though we're paying a premium, sort fact from fiction. How hard is it for the average freshman, sophomore, junior to really be that discerning with these professors?
I think they're really entering into a space where they're at a tremendous asymmetric disadvantage, and this is for a variety. One is, even if people aren't necessarily going out of the way to major in, let's say, anthropology or women's studies or lit crit, where, you know, the majority of wokeism and intersectional ideology is found, there's still a baseline that within that milieu that is established by so many other students that are taking those majors. So even if they're sticking strictly to a STEM course, for instance, they're still going to be immersed within subculture that is laden with those values. Second of all, the administration is really on board with these ideas as well. And then, you know, it's not overt, but it's subtle in a million little death by paper cuts ways, whether it's pronouns in emails or mandatory diversity, inclusion, and equity classes, or keychain lanyards that have rainbow, flags or rainbow coloring on them. It's these little nudging things that, in aggregate, essentially, it harbors a complicity towards the ideology of intersectionality, which is it's antithetical to Christianity and to the founding tenets of American patriotism. So those are the waters that students will be swimming in, regardless of what major they opt into. And then the other feature is, so many of the conservative, or what is left of conservative professors, they're actually scared of the students. They're actually paranoid that the students are going to come after them and that they're hunting for scalps. So a lot of conservative professors, and we note this in the book, they're actually closeted conservative professors, keeping their head down, walking on eggshells, scared of the students or the student mob deplatforming, canceling them, etc. So as students enter into college, they're not seeing any type of exemplar of a conservative professor standing up or offering any philosophical counterposition to the ideology that is omnipresent in their other classes.
You know, Doc, we're Catholics, so we have an understanding of sin, and we do our very best to get ourselves outside of the near occasion of sin. But it seems that sending your kids to college is exactly that. You're putting them in the near occasion of sin by what you just outlined. I'm wondering if you have a sort of a timeline, you know, because hindsight's 2020, right? So the other day I was watching a show, and the show had a scene of college, and it seemed to me as if it was a very progressive-looking college, and this was like in the 90s. I'm wondering if you have like a timeline of when these institutions were compromised.
Yes, we do. So my co-author Tim Gordon has a good breakdown of this, and you know, we can look at the start of the Enlightenment begins the first crack in the dam, and the removal of final causality and Aristotelianism from the Western mind and the Western conception of higher education. So we can start at the French Revolution there. Another key point is at Niagara with the advent of feminism. So now we have a concept that's generating fissures within the family unit. That bakes for about 100 years. Then in the 60s in particular, this is now you see the proto-neo-Marxist ideas of Gramsci and the Frankfurt School that were cooked up in the 30s beginning to inhabit the universities. And this gained steam with the sexual liberation, the sexual revolution of the 60s and 70s with gay rights. And that moves its way through the 70s and 80s. The 90s, you see the intimations of what at the time was still gay rights, but then also intimations of transvestitism. And then in the last 5 years or so, transvestitism gets memory hold. And you don't even hear the term transvestite anymore. It's just if a man puts on a dress, therefore he is a woman in all regards. And that really began emerging maybe 2015. So that only took 5 years to really emerge. So you see this logarithmic function of things picking up speed, where small errors in our thinking and in our conceptual framework, generations back, are now amounting to civilizational collapsing.
Yeah, it's like an avalanche.
Yeah. So, but the cracks in the dam, the first crack that we recognize as being the most fundamental one is the movement into the Enlightenment and the removal of Aristotelianism from higher education.
It's interesting. There's about a dozen things that could follow up with. But, one thing, I have this discussion quite often about universities. I went to university. I would like to pursue higher degrees, and so people say, "Oh, Adrian, why do you say that? And if you want to go back to college, why do you say people shouldn't go to college?" Well, I'm speaking generally, and the other thing that I hear a lot from a lot of parents, people my parents' age or older, is, "Oh, I want my kids to have that old college try, to get the college experience." And I find that to be just not very good. But I just wanted to bring that point up. But the question I have for you is, how do we overcome this credentialism? Because I think a lot of parents have a legitimate concern saying, I want my kids to have a job, but if you want to get a job, you have to have a degree, even though practically speaking, you don't actually need a degree, or I guess theoretically speaking, you don't actually need the degree to do the job. But practically speaking, they won't even look at you if you don't have a degree. And I'm looking at the top 20 most popular majors. I'm thinking about if you're a computer science or communications, like our field right here, and even business and management, nursing, even some of these jobs, most of them can be taught or learned by just being an apprentice, by taking on this job and learning it hands-on in the field. And so how do we overcome this field of credentialism where you can't even get your foot in the door unless you go to college and get a degree?
Exactly. Yeah, that's I think the big issue here, right, is where the universities used to be forming character and virtue and giving people actual knowledge. Now they've become largely these credentialing mills, and that's the point of going to college for a lot of folks, is to get the $100,000, $150,000 piece of paper that says you jump through all the hoops, and that is the problem. And I totally agree with you. I think that what people need is more hands-on experience, apprenticeship, and real world experience as the lights by which they navigate, as opposed to these credentialing degrees that might give you the degree, but then they hollow out your character and your critical thinking process. So we suggest, radically defunding, or agitating to defund a lot of these state schools that are in these woke programs where taxpayer money is funding these pernicious ideologies. And I think that, that's at least one way to begin trying to salvage what remains of the university system. We also steer people to the Newman List, to Hillsdale, to the academies, to some other non-woke Christian Aristotelian schools, where if you must go to college, these are ones that they haven't drank the Kool-Aid. So those are some of the hedges that we do make. If people are dead set on college, we at least point them away from the cliff that they might be going off of.
I wish we had more time. We're actually running out of time now, down to just the last couple of minutes with Dr. Robillard. You mentioned the academies. The Air Force Academy has got some woke issues for sure that it's been dealing with a lot of time. And introducing Wiccan was a big problem for them several years back. But nonetheless, how do we fix the college system? Is it fixable? Can we turn this thing around? Can we save the university higher education system, or is just put a fork in it, it's done?
Yeah, this is the question. So John Searle, the good philosopher at Berkeley, he makes the claim that there's two types of objects. They're physical objects and social objects. Physical object would be something like a shirt. The more I use it, the more it weakens. The social object would be something like currency. So the more I use dollar, the more legitimacy or strength I give to it. So the more we use objects, the more we grant legitimacy to social objects, social institutions, the stronger they get. So we're in a situation where it's like, yes, we do want universities, we want higher education, but how do we do so in a way where we're not legitimizing these poisons and these poisonous ideologies that have attached themselves and will strengthen as we send more minds, more bodies, more money to them. So that's the issue. And I think for now, the strategy needs to be one of embargo and starving the beast, and considering getting back to the trades, starting families early, staying local, being entrepreneurs, being autodidacts, teaching oneself any number of ideas and sources of knowledge that are online. I think starving the beast for now needs to be the first method, as opposed to sending money and citizens off to these mills to get completely brainwashed. That's our opinion. That's the point of the book.
Vote with your feet. Just don't send your kid anywhere because it looks good on paper, right? Heaven is the goal, not a good job. So maybe the good job has to happen, but if you don't get to heaven, it's pointless. Praise be to God. Michael Robillard, thank you for your time today. We're very grateful to you. We enjoyed this conversation. We'd love to have you back soon to talk about your other book. The book is called Don't Go to College, A Case for Revolution. It's published by Regnery. You can find more information on their website at regnery.com. That's regnery.com. That's going to do it for hour number 1 of Catholic Drive Time. If you can join us in the second hour, I'm going to share with you from bigpulpit.com an article by Monsignor Charles Pope on the stages of persecution. That's coming up next. Otherwise, we'll see you back here tomorrow